Mirrors whisper. She took the night desk at the Honeysuckle Motor Inn because nights were quiet and the money was steady even when nothing else was. The place sat just off an old state road that used to be busy before the newer highway went in. The inn, a low beige strip with a sagging awning and a neon sign that lost one letter every time there was a windstorm. On one end of the roof, the satellite dish tilted just enough to get the Weather Channel and the shopping station without snow. On the other end, an aluminum ladder leaned because nobody felt like taking it down after they changed a busted floodlight last April. In the mornings, the sun hit the pool and made a bright chemical rectangle in the parking lot. At night, the pool light made a dim aquarium of leaves and bugs. Lily worked from 10 to 6. She liked the things nights had to say. The soda machine's compressor clicked awake and counted to a number only it knew. The printer in the little office coughed out receipts with letters that bled on the thermal paper if your fingers were damp. The lobby clock lost a minute a week, then jumped forward an hour at daylight savings like it was trying to catch up on pride alone. The carpet cleaner left the entry rug smelling like a mix of orange peel and freight elevator. When the big refrigerator in the breakfast nook kicked off at 3, the sudden quiet made her hear her own breath for a second and made her think of hollow places, basements with no steps. She rented the manager's unit above the office, a narrow space with low ceilings and a bathroom with one of those wide medicine cabinet mirrors with sliding doors. The doors had a little hitch in the middle where one silver backing was lifting, an old sickness that showed itself as brown freckles like something growing underneath. The faucet dripped if you turned it off firm instead of gentle, so she learned the angle and the touch. She learned a lot of angles and touches, the little ways to keep small things in line. July was a hot pan that year, and the town felt like it sat on the back burner. Even at 1 in the morning, the asphalt bled its day's heat, and you could see it in the shimmer under the sodium lamps, the way the air moved without any wind. On her smoke breaks, Lily would stand under the awning and watch moths beat themselves against the glass, and she'd think about the plant. The old plant squatted 3 miles south along the river where the coal barges used to nose in. They made flat glass there for decades, floating molten sheets across a bath of tin until they cooled into windows, mirrors, anything flat that pretended to hold a world. Her mother had done 10 years on packing and her uncle longer. Lily had worked the canteen one summer when she was 19, wiping ketchup rings and filling the slush machine until the syrup barrel coughed and burped. She remembered the smell of hot, almost clean water, of the lime scale people called rust out of habit. She remembered the first aid posters that faded in one corner near the microwaves and the long list of shift rotations taped to the wall, names highlighted when a guy was late too many times. The plant closed when she was 22 and left its rectangle of light and heat behind like a handprint on glass. After that, she took day work at a discount store and learned how to make her smile go on like the fluorescent buzz in the ceiling, steady no matter. When her mother's lungs got bad, she took nights because she could take her mother to appointments in the afternoons and nap in the evening. After her mother died, the hospice bed in the living room, the oxygen concentrator humming like a big sad fish tank. What was left of her life didn't hold together right. The landlord in their old place wanted the apartment and then didn't, and she moved to the inn because the manager said, sure, you can sleep upstairs and keep your things where you can see them, and there's a hot plate, and you can run a little space heater in winter if you mind the bill. So she worked nights and learned the work. She turned the waffle iron off at 11 instead of midnight because the last time someone tried a waffle after 9, they smeared batter on the counter and then left, and the scorch stayed for days. She wiped the fingerprints off the lobby S mirror behind the pamphlet rack because people had a way of fixing hair even when nobody was around to see them. She kept the cash drawer neat with all the faces up the same way because when it wasn't neat, the drawer stuck, and she hated the small violence of yanking it. She learned the trick to the register tape, how to wedge the spool with the knuckle of her ring finger while catching the edge with the nail of her middle finger. She learned all the ways the place wanted to be handled. The first time she saw it was a Monday, the kind of Monday that feels like Friday forgot to put the lid on. The lobby air was thick from a broken conditioner in room 12. The smell had a sweet, warm edge like wet cardboard left too long in a garage. Lily had a damp rag and the little bottle of glass spray the manager kept in a cabinet because the label still said mirror and window, even though the world had decided to call everything glass cleaner now. She sprayed the lobby mirror out of habit after wiping fingerprints. One pass and the drag of the towel was smooth, the way it ought to be. She raised the towel for a second pass and saw her own face behind its edge, the normal way you catch your face in whatever surface is at hand when you've retired and your eyes find you before your mind looks. Her mouth looked wrong. It wasn't wrong exactly. It was as if she had wrapped her lips around a thought she didn't like, as if she were about to say fine in a voice that meant the opposite. She dropped the towel in a soft clap on the counter and lifted both hands, not sure what she would do with them. The face in the mirror lifted both hands, and in the split second of catching up, she thought of a thing the old guys from the plant used to say about rollers, how heat and time change anything that moves across them. They said it like you should hear a lesson in the joke. She smiled at the mirror to prove something ordinary to herself, and her reflection smiled back. But the smile had a little tilt that could have been an angle of glass, or it could have been what the mouth did when it got tired of being a mouth. She smoothed her hair, or pretended to. The glass caught the motion and gave it back a fraction off, like watching a video with the sound just late enough to bother you. Heat, she said. Not because heat had anything to do with it, but because it was the only word the air would hold. She sprayed again. The second pass made a tight squeak, and for a beat she felt something deep in the glass, some give, as if the mirror were a drum stretched wrong and she had found the place that remembered. The phone rang. She turned away from the mirror and picked up the receiver. The man in 14 wanted more towels, and she said sure, and the normal act of loading towels into a little white basket calmed whatever notion had climbed out of the glass. By the time she stepped out of the office into the hall with the ice machine thrum, chewing at the corner of every sound, she had rationalized the moment into what it probably was. Heat, angle, the fatigue you carried when you slept in pieces instead of whole. That week she saw it in little bits, in the convex bubble of the security camera dome above the snack machine, just a smear of her face, but the smear had an expression different from hers, a something like patience in the curve of it, when inside her the patience ran thin. In the glass of the breakfast nook cooler door, a faint catching when she lifted a yogurt to check the date and glimpsed her own eyes and thought they looked like someone had colored the irises with a dull lead pencil. On Thursday, wiping the front door's panes where moth dust made a dull haze, she saw her hand smear left, while her own hand moved right, a lag that took the breath out of her lungs, in the small way a cold drink can, making her chest ask a question and her brain answer later. She told herself, what you tell yourself when whatever is wrong is not the kind of wrong anyone else would see if they were standing right next to you. She told herself about cheap glass and old metal in the mirror backing, about humid air and the way it makes the world soft. She told herself about the plant's job cuts, leaving people who should have fixed things to take other work. She told herself the town was in a run-down version of a long blink, and that she was too, and that if she got some sun on her face instead of living under light bulbs, she'd see her eyes right again and stop inventing things to scare herself with. Friday night around 2, a state trooper came in and asked if she'd seen a blue sedan with a rust patch under the gas cap, and she hadn't, and he wrote something on a pad that sounded like wax under the pen. His reflection in the mirror by the pamphlets was clear and undisturbed. He stood in profile by the desk and nodded to his own face, as if to confirm he still had one. "Hot," he said to the room. She nodded. He left. She watched the door swing soft on its hinges, watched her face in the pane as it shut. Her mouth again not an exact match for the mouth she wore. She turned the lock and listened to the bolt go home with that soft metal-on-metal click that always felt like it belonged to a different age of doing things. In August, the town Electric Company started a rotating brownout schedule with a postcard they mailed but didn't follow. Tuesday between noon and 3, sometimes Wednesday after dark. The lights dimmed and held or fluttered like they were trying to be faithful to reduced voltage and failing in a way that made you want to unplug everything you cared about. The ice machine threw a little tantrum of flashing lights when it got less power, then settled and sounded like a cat purring with its mouth open. The security system chirped. The little desk fan clacked twice when it dropped to speed. The television above the breakfast bar showed a band of brighter snow across the bottom of the shopping channel presenter S. Hands, like she was selling hair dryers from inside a rainstorm nobody acknowledged. When the lights came back to full, the mirror in the office bathroom felt like a wall of cold. Not everything in August felt hot. Inside certain kinds of metal, you could find a trapdoor into winter, and in that same way, Lily sometimes touched the mirror with the back of her fingers and felt the kind of cool that belonged down in the basement in January. She stopped doing that because it made her skin remember it without her hand needing to try again. One night, she went into the bathroom for aspirin and found herself already in the mirror. She stood in the door, and the woman in the glass stood closer, as if she had stepped forward while Lily had paused. The medicine cabinet's bulbs were yellow domes that hummed. Her reflection's hair looked like it had held a hat a long time, slightly wrong at the crown, a small shift that felt like something more. She watched herself for maybe half a minute, waiting to be bored by her own face. She did not get bored. Her reflection blinked and she blinked, and the timing felt like how it feels when you clap in a gym and hear the echo clap a little later, and that made her laugh once. A little expelled air, unamused. She stepped backward into the tiny room and sat on the closed toilet to see what the sitting did to the stance of the woman opposite. It did what it should. The woman sat with her hands on her knees. But the knees pointed a touch inward, not a knock-kneed thing, not anything a person would name. It was like the posture belonged to a girl she had once been and then forgot. The way kids sit on bleachers when they're waiting for someone to tell them what to do. Lily folded her hands and the other hands did the same. She tipped her head and hers tipped. Then Lily changed tactics and didn't move at all. She stared at the woman for a full minute and did her best to go blank. Right near the end, when your muscles start to twitch because your nerves like to interfere, she saw the mirror woman's mouth pull in slightly, like that woman had tasted the inside of her own cheek. The feeling in Lily's own mouth didn't change. It was like watching a stranger, a small habit from a bus seat, and knowing somehow it was your habit if the bus had taken a different turn. She slept upstairs with the light on and woke feeling like she'd been studying something with her eyes while her mind tried to be ignorant. She made coffee in the little Mr. brewer she kept by the microwave and drank it without sugar because she had stopped buying sugar 2 months before, not out of health, just out of not thinking to, and then finding that black coffee tasted like a steadiness you could pour. She looked at the microwave door's black glass to see if the kitchen held a surprise. The door held her normal morning face, which wasn't anyone's idea of normal, really. Her cheeks a bit puffy from the way she slept, her eyes lined in pale roads. But at least it was hers. On the third Monday of that month, a woman checked in with a boy who held a soccer ball under one arm and had a bruise on his shin that started purple and ended in a yellow that looked like the color of old schools. The woman paid cash. She counted wrong and then corrected herself and said something about an aunt who had lived here once. Here, meaning the town, not the motel. Lily gave them the fee and a plastic key card and the Wi-Fi password on a slip printed for that. She watched their leaving faces in the lobby mirror without looking like she was watching herself. The boy's face arrived and was the boy's. The woman's arrived and was the woman's. Then Lily's arrived and was Lily's, with an extra expression deep in the eyes. Something like pity mixed with curiosity, the way people look at auctions at houses they can't afford. Behind the desk there was a plastic tub the staff called the lost and maybe somebody will bin. It had chargers with frayed heads, a hairbrush with long hair the color of spilled beer, stuck in it a pair of reading glasses, with one arm taped a pocket Bible with a motel stamp inside, but not this motel stamp. On a quiet hour, Lily sorted the bin on the counter and saw her face in the glass of picture frames that technically weren't lost property, but hung on the lobby wall. Stock photos of lighthouses, stock photos of a woodland trail with leaves like fire underfoot. In the glass, she saw her mouth flat and then not flat, and she thought of her mother again, the way she had covered the apartment mirrors for a week after her brother died, because that was what her own mother had done, and because the glass had made her nervous. Her mother had said, "Respect the glass," and then cried, and then put tape over the bottom of the living room mirror because she thought a color in it looked wrong. "Respect the glass," she said now in the lobby like a joke just to see how it sounded. And of course the way she said it made it sound like another person had said it first, and she was late to the line. Another brownout. The lights went grey, then held. The little hum of everything changed pitch. It was like a chorus made of appliances had shifted a note. The lobby mirror looked darker around the edges, as if it pulled the room in by a degree. The security system chirped the way a smoke detector chirps when it wants your attention to batteries, but this chirp was content, not needy. It was like the machine was congratulating itself for remaining. She stood in the middle of the lobby and looked at the mirror without moving. Her face didn't move either. Something in the left eye, her left, the mirror, right, had retreated a fraction into shadow, even though the light in the room hadn't changed in any way she could feel. The eye looked like a well with a coin in it that no one would ever fish. That was where the whisper began. If you had asked her before, she would have said a whisper is a breath shaped by a throat. If you had asked her now, she would have said it was something quieter, a difference between two surfaces moving past each other. If you had set a piece of paper on a desk and slid another piece of paper across it slowly, the sound would become what she heard. The whisper didn't use words. It didn't need to. It had the tone of something that belongs in corners. She tried names. Wind, there was no wind. Duct, there was no duct nearby. Refrigeration. The big unit whispered loud when it had something to say and then stopped. This was not that. She tried the word memory, and that didn't help either, even if it felt close. The paper sound came when she looked into the mirror, and when she looked away, it stopped. She played with that. Look, not look, look, not look. The whisper displayed the same kind of obedience you get from a polite child, the kind that feels like mockery when it goes on too long. She put a sticky note on the lobby mirror. Out of order. It was stupid. But she wanted to test the idea that if the world had a sign on it, the world might behave like it had read it. She kept the note there for an hour. A man with a night shift at a warehouse came in to buy juice and a pack of donuts from the vending machine. He used the mirror anyway to wipe his eyes with his palms and make a face like he didn't like his job. The note didn't save her from his reflection. Her reflection looked around the man as if she was sneaking. She pulled the note down after he left because seeing it made her feel childish. You only get so many gestures before you start to seem the kind of person who needs gestures. In September, the power company's postcard schedules became more wrong, and the town started talking about a bigger issue under everything. The old plant site had a fence around it now, and a sign that said no trespassing, and there were rumors about something seeping. Nobody official said the word contamination, but people at the bakery did, and the guy at the bait and tackle did, and the school's principal said the water fountain would be out of service until further notice. The motel had a little binder of state regs that lived under the desk. One page had a section on water advisories. Lily flipped to it, skimmed how to boil, how to post, what to tell guests in legal language that didn't want to be interrupted by human speech. The manager put a typed page on the breakfast counter that said, "Due to a municipal advisory, please use bottled water provided." He set out bottles in a plastic tub that used to hold ice for beer on busy weekends. The tub sweated on the counter and made a ring that bloomed across the wood like a Planet S atmosphere. One of the room's mirrors broke in two. The guest in 6 said she heard it crack in the middle of the night. She wasn't mad, she said. She just wanted someone to know. Lily went in after her shift and looked at the mirror. The break had a neatness to it, like someone had drawn a line and the glass had followed it out of spite. You could run a finger near the line and feel a thread of air that lived between two new planes. She replaced the mirror with one from the storage closet that had a small chip in one corner and did her best to hang it level. The new mirror held the room like a breath in. The old one leaned against the trash cage out back, awaiting the day somebody felt like hauling it to the big dumpster over in the far corner that the company paid extra to empty. She started noticing reflections in places that weren't mirrors. The black face of her phone when it slept. That glass used to be nothing. Now it showed her in it even when black, a ghost version that had a longer face like she'd held a note too long. The puddles in the parking lot after the rain that didn't really rain but spit and then quit. The water in them read the sky like a thrift store reads a person. In the puddles, her cheeks looked sunken in a way that made her touch them in the real world and check for hollows. In the glass door of the microwave when she heated soup in the lunchroom, she saw her lip draw back from her teeth like a dog that isn't to certain it is a dog. She went into the upstairs apartment and covered the medicine cabinet mirror with an old beach towel. It stayed that way for 2 days, and then she took it off because brushing her teeth blind made more mess and frustration than calm. She told herself she couldn't live like a person who did things like that. She told herself it mattered to handle ordinary objects in the ordinary way, because that was the rope you held. She stood and brushed and watched her face lift in the glass and her mouth lower, like she appreciated a joke she wasn't making. And after a week of that, she changed her routine, so she brushed without looking, and then glanced up at the end to check if anything required telling her. Her reflection leaned in that last second, as if to check her back. Every once in a while, she would get a pain behind her left eye. It came quick, like a bit of wire pulled from a pocket, and then it softened into a pressure that made her feel like the lens under there had grown a skin. She sat down and breathed the way the yoga video on the shopping channel said to breathe, and after a while the pressure receded. She told herself migraines were common. She told herself dehydration does things. She took her water bottle to the office and filled it from the store of actual bottled water they kept under the desk for guests, even though they said it was for the breakfast counter. She drank the water and felt fine in the whole way a person means when they mean parts of them still voted no. She had a set of old photographs in a shoebox, the kind from a drugstore when drugstores had separate counters for all that. She knew she had them. One night, she climbed up on the little stool to get the box from the top of the closet. And the top of the box stamped a pattern of dust on her hands that she wiped on her jeans without thinking. She sat on the floor and spread the photos on the mat that faced the bed. Her mother young and looking at someone, not the camera. Her brother with a co-worker, both in hairnets, acting like that was how people ought to be photographed. A younger Lily on a plastic chair by an apartment pool, with the level of the water showing green under the sky because somebody had set the camera wrong. In some of the pictures, there was a little flash reflection if a mirror or window had been in frame. In those tiny squares, the glint turned into the curve of a thing, a light that had an edge. She stared long enough at one and thought maybe the glint held a face. She enlarged that in her mind until she got almost dizzy. She put the photos back in the box and stood and put the box where it had been. The next night, one of the breakfast guests, a woman in a suit skirt too tight to be comfortable picking up a banana, turned to the lobby mirror and adjusted her hair. Lily was at the desk. Their eyes met in the glass. There was a second where Lily saw in the other woman what maybe everyone saw in everyone. Some flicker of doubt that the arrangement of features would hold until evening. Then the woman turned and said, "You ever feel like the lights here buzz more than they need to?" "Sometimes," Lily said. The woman nodded, a small, great understanding, and left with a paper cup of coffee that would leak through its seam by the time she got to the car. On Monday, the manager Josh brought in a new mirror to hang behind the pamphlet rack, or new to the motel anyway. It was round with a frame that looked like driftwood, although it was probably just strange, glued-up bits of actual wood. He said the old mirror had looked cheap, and this one would class up the place. He hung it himself with a level and little pads and a tape measure. When he held it away from the wall for a beat, Lily saw herself doubled in a way that made her swallow. When he let go, the mirror settled and fixed the lobby in its circle. "Nice, right?" he said. "It's something," she said. He looked at her. "You sleeping okay upstairs?" "Sure. If it gets too loud, tell that guy in 19 to quit smoking on the balcony. He ashed all over the railing like it's his lawn." "Okay," she said. "Also, corporate says we got to put those informational tent cards in every bathroom now about the water and the housekeeping schedule change." "Right," she said. He moved off to the back to count the little shampoos. Lily stood and faced the circle. The new mirror reflected her different than the old one because of the fisheye in its glass. That was sensible. The edge of the frame broke the room into segments like a map. She lifted her hand at shoulder height and waved once for science. The woman in the circle moved her hand up more than shoulder height, then set it down. It could have been the curve of the glass. It could have been her own mind a fraction out of time because she hadn't eaten in 6 hours. It could have been the way the wood frame bit into the light and gave it back meaner. She was almost glad to have a reason other than her own face. She wiped the frame with a rag because it looked like it wanted that. The tent cards made the place look like a hotel that tries too hard. "Please help us conserve water during this time of advisory. If you needed more towels, see the front desk. If you wanted housekeeping every other day, please hang the blue card. If you wanted it every day, the red. If you wanted nothing, the green." Lily placed the cards in a stack and felt something in her chest guess at the small ways you could tell the world no and have it hear you. She knew better than to believe in it. She put the cards in sleeves, carried them room to room, and saw herself in each room's mirror a dozen times before she finished. In some mirrors, the light made her hair look darker and other times too red. In some, her nose straightened, and in others, it did its old bent trick. In some, her eyes were hers. At the end of the run, she walked the balcony and looked down into the pool and saw something like a person underwater where no person was, which is to say she saw the reflection of a woman on the balcony above her who wasn't there either if you went up to check. She didn't tell Josh because if you said it out loud, you were giving it more hands. She told herself like this: stress catches where you hid the old grief. And the brain has all kinds of little ways of tapping the glass and pretending the sound is coming from the other side. She told herself like this: the town is off, the power is off, the water is off. Off is a color everything wears sometimes. At 2 in the morning, she checked the security monitors, the system hooked up to 4 black and white screens that lived in the office on a metal shelf. Camera 1 showed the lobby from a high corner, the round mirror, the counter, the 2 fake ferns. Camera 2 pointed down the breezeway, doors, concrete, a soda machine at the far end with a rectangle of brighter rectangle where its advertisement lived. Camera 3 covered the pool area, water dark, lights low, the float chain dividing the shallow end from the deep, like someone had tried to draw a horizon line where there wasn't T1. Camera 4 watched the back lot where employees parked and where the dumpster sat like a fullback to the property line. Usually the cameras did what cameras do. Tonight, Camera 1 showed the lobby as it always was, except the round mirror was a dull coin, and in the coin you could see a woman whose posture leaned forward like she was listening. Lily watched herself in that television of the room she stood in. She lifted her hand. Camera 1's Lily lifted hers the same. Then the Lily in the coin lifted both hands and set them on the wood frame from the inside. The rest of the lobby's Lily stood normal. Lily stepped backward toward the desk until the edge of her heel found the crossbar in the stool. The whisper that had been paper upon paper now sounded like two pieces of glass kissing, which is a sound you know without needing to have heard it. She changed to Camera 2. The breezeway looked fine. Drip marks where rain that wasn't much had made a point of being noticed. Someone's towel drying on the railing of room 9. She held on Camera 2 longer than she needed to. She changed back to 1. The mirror in the little television mirror was empty in the way glass is empty when it's too clean to look at, the kind of empty that makes you think you could walk through if your shoes were the right kind. She put the system on cycle so it went 1, 2, 3, 4 by itself every 6 seconds. She wanted the rhythm, the way a pump hum is reassuring if you've heard it enough. That was the night a guest called down because the TV in his room showed a channel full of faces even with the set off. "It's a reflection," she said into the phone, and he said, "Of what?" And she thought about trying to explain the word everything, and then didn't, and she went and unplugged his set and plugged it in again. The faces went away because that is a thing that works sometimes, not because it made sense. He tipped her with quarters he said he had been saving for laundry. She carried the quarters in her palm and then poured them into the till and then took one back to keep in her pocket the way people keep worry stones, not to rub, just to know. When she got off at 6, she climbed the stairs to her apartment and went straight to the bathroom. The cabinet mirror had its old brown freckles. The sliding doors made their little catch sound in the track. She stood and looked because she could not look and have that be worse. The face opposite hers had a mouth less full than hers. The lips looked like someone had drawn them and then erased parts and drawn again. The eyes on first glance were her eyes on a bad day when the lids looked heavy and the skin undershowed maps. Look longer and there was something else. The pupils softer or not softer, but not quite the right black, like the pupil had learned a trick it shouldn't have. Her own mouth opened a little because that is what a mouth does when its owner cannot decide whether to say a thing. In the mirror, the mouth closed. It was small as differences go, but if you keep a coin in your pocket long enough, you know the burr in the rim. She went to the drawer and took out a piece of electrical tape. She took 2, 3, then covered the bottom edge of the mirror with a stripe like a river on a map. She told herself she wasn't covering the mirror. She was playing with the way a room can change when a surface does. She told herself things lacked truth until you changed them and then changed them back. She brushed her teeth looking at the stripe. She spit and the stripe didn't care. She left the tape and went to sleep and dreamed she had been hired at a store that sold only empty picture frames. The next night, the water company posted a new advisory. Do not drink without boiling. Consult your municipality. The town sent texts like polite sirens. The inn's phone rang with a calm man who asked to speak to accounts payable. Josh took the call and stood in the doorway with the phone wedged and said, "Okay," twice. He hung up and said to Lily, "We gotta buy more bottled water." "I'll put a sign," she said, "and don't let anyone use the ice. There's a roll of tape in the bottom drawer, and put a bag over the machine's chute. Make it complicated so they take you at your word." "Okay," she said. She did that, tape across the ice button, the bag over the chute, a printout that said, "Do not use," in a font aggressive as a barking dog. She still fielded 3 requests for ice by midnight. She told them no, they shouldn't. The last man said, "A little won't kill me," with a smile that was supposed to make her agree that all things fail in small pieces, and it's fine to let them. She gave him a bag of ice she had bought at the gas station herself on break, just to have something to hand a person like him. He took it like she had done him a favor he'd now keep for later. At 3 in the morning, the refrigerator in the breakfast nook went quiet again, and her ears made their usual adjustment. In the quiet, she heard the whisper in the round mirror in the lobby, sharper now, like the noise a wet fingertip makes on the rim of a glass. She went to the mirror. She raised her hand. She kept it raised. She watched the woman in the glass unhook her hands from something and raise one, then the other. The woman's smile became the idea of a smile, then decided not to be. Lily put her hand down slowly so as not to spook herself. The other hand stayed raised, and the other woman leaned closer. Lily felt the temperature of the room change in the way it does when a refrigerator cycles back on, except nothing did. She felt a cold under the skin at the back of her neck, the way a thought can be cold. She stepped backward. She heard a faint, dry rasping as though someone inside the mirror had run their nails across wood. She said out loud, which she never did, "No." The word in the air was small and didn't mean anything. The sound came back from the office doorway, like a polite cough. She said, "No," again, and felt like she had said it to a child and to herself in the same breath. She slept upstairs with the light on and woke to the tape on the mirror, peeling up at the corner like a tongue. On Thursday afternoon, she took the bus to the clinic. The doctor was new, a man with a face that looked like he apologized often. She told him about the headaches. She did not tell him about the mirror. He said sometimes water problems correspond to other problems. He said the body is mostly water and everything listens to everything else. He suggested magnesium. He said a scan would be expensive and maybe not necessary now. He told her to keep notes when the pressure came, whether the light felt like too much, whether sound did. He talked like a man adjusting a picture frame that would never be level. She took the sheet he printed that had breathing exercises on it. The printer made a cough at the end like a laugh that failed. She rode the bus back and watched a woman in the window across the aisle. The window's reflections stretched faces into types. This made the world less personal. She relaxed into it, and then she saw that the woman across wasn't a T in the window the way Lily was. The woman's reflection slimmed and sharpened. The hairline on the reflection looked wrong. Lily grabbed the pole harder than she meant to. The bus swayed at the light, and a kid 2 rows up dropped a soda bottle, and the bottle rolled and hit Lily's foot and made a plastic cluck. The woman across sneezed, and her reflection didn't. Lily closed her eyes and did the breathing from the sheet. She opened them and looked down the aisle until the bus stopped, and then it was time to stand, and she didn't see the woman again. Back at the inn, she found a post-it on the desk from Josh. "Corporate insists we check all bathroom mirrors for safety." There was a list, check boxes next to each room. She took a key ring and a flashlight and a roll of the good tape and went room to room. In room 3, the mirror had a wobble because the drywall screws had lost their bite. She taped the top edge with painter S-tape, like a person can do until real work is done. In room 5, the mirror would not show the little blue housekeeping card when she held it to the glass. It swallowed the color in a way the world does not do. She spent a minute thinking of glass thickness, of coating, of the way lights above the sink make colors look wrong. She took the card away, and the mirror looked like it had eaten something it couldn't keep down. She left the room with the box unchecked and made a note in tiny letters on the back of the list where people don't read. She started making a record the way the doctor said. Tiny lines in a little notebook. 2:15 a.m., pressure under left eye. 1:02 a.m. mirror smile off by X. She didn't write X. She wrote a little picture of a mouth. The act of drawing the mouth made her feel like she was sewing something closed, with thread so fine you didn't know it existed. She turned the page when she filled a page, and that turning made a small crack of noise that she liked in her hands. Then came the storm, not a big thing. The radio called it a heat thunderstorm, which meant all the forecasts were wrong until a cloud decided to make a point. The rain fell fat for 10 minutes and then stopped and left the air thick. The parking lot puddles were deep enough to hold half-car reflections, and the pool had a layer of things the wind had carried. The power held and then let go and came back. The television above the breakfast bar flashed between channels without caring. The lights flickered and steadied. Lily stood by the round mirror and watched the lobby become the lobby again. In the mirror, the woman who was her wiped her own breath from the glass with the flat of her hand. That was how Lily realized there was no breath on her side. She blew on the glass and left a bloom that faded. The other bloom behaved differently. The other hand wiped with a smallness, a caution, as if someone else off to the side were watching. Lily leaned in, and the smell of the wood frame rose up like a damp attic. On her side, nothing changed. She touched the frame S-carved scallops and felt the same thing you feel when you touch wood that has been varnished too often, a falseness, a slick. On the other side, her double set her palms on the frame and pushed like a person at a door. Lily took a step back and knocked the baseboard heater with her heel, and it clicked as metal cools does. The click broke whatever line she had been walking. She listened to the refrigerator decide whether to try again. She listened to the traffic light at the corner make its relay sound. She listened to the building, and the building listened back. She dreamed that night without sleeping. At least that's how it felt when she woke up at 10 p.m. with her mouth dry. She had been inside a department store after hours. She had been a person in a reflection nobody else in the dream saw. That was too neat for her taste. She disliked neat. She made instant oatmeal because it was the only food she felt like buying anymore. Torn packets in a drawer, a kettle that would never quite keep the shine under its handle. She ate the oatmeal standing at the kitchenette counter and looked out the small window over the dumpster, where one light always stuttered, and in the dark glass of the window she saw her face with a grin that she did not own. It was a big grin, a carnival grin. A grin that took in the lower eyelids, the cheeks, the jaw. She did not have teeth like that. The glass gave her teeth like that. She set the bowl down and the spoon clinked a note that felt rehearsed. She went out of the apartment and locked the door and went down the stairs faster than someone who isn't tea running. The inn had a hallway to a small conference room that no one used except church groups on Saturdays and the men from the utility when they needed a place to lay out maps. The hallway had a wall of framed photos showing town scenes. The plant had shift-change rows of men in hard hats looking at something not the camera, ribbon cuttings, a parade with a flatbed and a banner for the high school. Lily walked down the hallway and noticed that in each frame the glass had a different smudge. In one, fingerprints on the lower right. In another, a streak like someone had reached in and tried to grab a thing. She saw her face in each glass in passing. Her face changed as the angle changed. This felt boring the first two frames, then alarming, then boring again, then something else. She stopped at the plant shot. The glass over that picture had a line in it the way glass gets when it has been hit and survived. In the line, she saw her face deeply, as if it were a little river, and she was a leaf. The mouth in that reflection was not any mouth she had seen on a human. It was an idea of hunger, but the kind that eats slowly. She stepped back and took the picture off the wall and held it by its wire like a person about to replace a thing that should not be touched. Behind the glass, the photo paper stuck to the mat at one corner. The stickiness made a sound when she lifted the glass, a kiss like glass kisses. She set the glass aside on the empty carpet and held the photo up so that it didn't art reflect. The mouths of the men in the picture were their mouths. The glass on top did the rest. Lily put the glass back on and hung the frame. She took the glass cleaner from the custodial closet and sprayed all the frames and wiped them with a vengeance that got lighter as it went. By the end, she wore her own breath like a garment, and she felt calm in the way a person does when they have done a chore no one asked for. Then came the night she broke the mirror. Not because she wanted to, because her body did a thing without requesting permission from her sense of propriety. It was after 2. The lobby had the particular hush it gets when a truck idles outside and then kills its engine, and you can tell the person is deciding whether to come in. The round mirror held the room like a still pond. Lily saw a movement in the mirror that wasn't a movement in the room. The movement was a hand, her hand, raising behind the desk as if to rest on the counter. Her real hand was on her leg, palm flat, the way people keep track of themselves. She thought, angle. Then she thought, delay. Then she thought, don't be stupid. Then the hand in the mirror tapped the counter twice, a small soft sound. Lily stood, picked up the stapler because it was the thing her hand found, and threw it. The sound the stapler made hitting the glass was not the sound of a stapler hitting glass. It was the sound of a doorbell in another wing of a house you don't own. The mirror caught a crack at the edge, and then slowly like an ice sheet, a white line grew a finger, then 2, and then a tiny piece fell off near the bottom and hit the tile and rang like a coin. The whisper rose. It was paper at first, then glass on glass, then a tiny wind in a throat. She wanted to apologize to Josh for the property damage, and to the mirror for the insult, and to herself for the weakness. She picked up the stapler and set it down with all the care you give an instrument you remember hurling moments ago. She called Josh and left a message because he wouldn't answer that late. Broke the lobby mirror. I'll pay for it if I have to. We should clean it up before somebody... She didn't to finish. Gets cut because she was thinking it, and the mirror was thinking it with her, and she did not want to be in the same sentence as the mirror if she could help it. She fetched the broom and the dustpan, the big orange gloves from the closet. She arranged her body so that if the mirror broke more, she would not be in the path. She began to sweep the tiny shards on the tile. Each shard held a shard of her and gave her eyes wrong numbers. The pieces stabbed through the orange gloves in fine, invisible ways that she felt a minute later as sting. She kept sweeping. When she had a pan full, she stood careful and dumped it into the little trash barrel. The pieces in the barrel made a sound like rain on a tin roof when you can tell if it's rain or if mice are up there making a life. When she stood again to sweep more, the mirror didn't hold her at all. It held a hallway she didn't have in the lobby, long, with globe lights and a runner with a pattern she had never seen. She did not have a runner. The inn had tile that showed dirt, like a man is honest. The mirror, its hallway, had a soft noise, like far traffic of a kind of car the town didn't see. She put the broom handle across the desk and leaned toward the glass and felt the air cold off it. She saw movement far down the false hall, someone in a dress the kind you wear to be nice in a decade she had not lived. Lily said out loud, not loud, but out, "Stop." The person coming down the hallway kept coming. It was not a hurry. It was a pace anyone could recognize if they had ever walked to the mailbox to see a particular letter they knew would be there. Lily said to the air, "No," and the air didn't take the word, so it fell on the tile and stayed. She reached for the broom and knocked it over, and the knock made another sound that felt rehearsed. She picked up the broom and poked at the glass, not hard, just enough to say what she wanted to say without her mouth. The crack deepened. One of the cracks touched another, and they traveled together like two people who had met a long time ago, and then again now, and had code. A new shard fell and didn't fall, hung by a hair of silver. Lily poked the hair with the handle S end, and the shard let go and hit, and she felt her chest empty and then fill again. She finished sweeping. She found a big contractor bag, because that is what the closet had. She kept the bag near the pile as she scooped. She tied the bag when it was full to a weight you felt when you lifted it, and put it by the back door, thinking she'd take it to the dumpster when a guest came in and she could leave the desk a minute. She put the yellow caution sign on the tile in front of the mirror, because a caution sign is a costume you make a mess wear. She sat at the desk and drank a bottle of water and waited for herself to be different. She waited without believing in it. The round frame on the wall now held a surface that looked like the skin on milk. The next morning, she went up and stood in front of her bathroom mirror and did nothing for a minute. A person in a toothbrushing ad came to mind. White towel, open mouth, satisfaction in the corners of the eyes. She put the towel over the mirror, and you can say she gave in, or you can say she did a thing that helped. She left the towel there and went downstairs and jobbed her job. Josh came in at 9 and looked at the broken mirror and looked at her and said nothing. That was a kind of kindness. He called his cousin about a glass guy, and the cousin said he knew a guy, and the guy said he could come Thursday, and they all stood in the lobby and looked at the frame and said he'd bring a pane a little smaller and use clips. The glass guy said something about how round mirrors are not good business. The lobby felt like a room waiting for a party to start and then change its mind. That night, Lily found herself checking the cameras every 10 minutes, as if the monitors were a thing that could tell her more of herself than she knew. In camera 1, the empty round frame reflected the lobby like a hole. The frame looked like a mouth made of wood. In camera 2, the breezeway had towels and lost shoes and a cigarette burn she hadn't noticed before. In camera 3, the pool water took the moon and broke it, because that is what water does. In camera 4, the backlot was a blank until a cat walked through like a person who did not need permission. At 2:30, a woman from room 8 came to the desk in pajama pants and said the bathroom mirror was fogging in a way she did not feel comfortable with. "Steam," Lily said. "I didn't shower," the woman said. "Maybe the room is humid. It's making little shapes." "What shapes?" "I don't know, like letters if you squint." "I'm sorry. I know how it sounds." "It's okay," Lily said. "Do you want a different room?" "I think I'll just go back to sleep," the woman said. And this felt like a good life choice, if by good you mean practical, and not by practical you mean right. After the woman left, Lily stood for a second with her hands on the desk and her head lowered, her eyes on the little nick in the wood where someone had dropped something heavy years ago. She felt the room tilt a degree, like maybe the building had settled more in the clay. She took the notebook and wrote 2:40, letters in mirror, guest. She drew a little square for the mirror and a tiny line that could be an L or could be just a line. On Friday, the glass guy hung the new circle and fixed the frame like he said he would. He was young, too young to have an old job like that, but he had hands that knew patience. He put the new glass in, and there was a sound of a rubber mallet, a sound that felt baseline and good. He wiped the surface and said, "See," and you had to agree on general terms with the idea of seeing. Lily stood and nodded in the way the world wants from you when a job is finished. The glass held her and she held it, and they did not argue. That night the new circle did not whisper. It hummed like a thing in a choir might hum, if it cared to sing on its own, but knew its place. She relaxed enough to think of other things, of how to arrange the breakfast pastries so that people took the older ones first, of whether to switch providers for the internet, because someone had left a flyer with a rate lower than the rate Josh paid now. She thought of whether she should buy a rug for the apartment, so stepping out of bed wouldn't put her feet on cold. She thought of winter and of what coats cost. At 3, while restocking the coffee pods in their little carousel like bullets that made a different kind of morning, she looked up and the reflection of the carousel in the new mirror was not a carousel. It was a ring of little mouths open, a ring like a crown of sharp. She stared long enough to make herself laugh. She looked back down and spun the carousel. It clicked and made that small ratchet sound. She looked up, and in the mirror, the ring of little mouths spun the wrong way. She blinked, and the carousel in the room spun the same direction as before, because it does. The mirror ring spin was a small difference, and she told herself the light gave that extra. She thought, just stop. Then the mirror's ring stopped. In the real room, she had not stopped. She took the towel she kept under the desk to wipe spills, and she threw it over the mirror, not hard, a gentle throw like you cover a bird cage to help a bird remember sleep. The towel clung to the frame. It made the lobby look like a place where a statue had been draped before unveiling. She breathed, and then she laughed, and then she felt something heavy in her chest that had nothing to do with laughter. She left the towel and changed the coffee filter in the small machine, because that was what had to be done next. At 4:15, a man came to the desk without shoes. He said his TV made a noise like talking. That was not the precise kind of complaint you hear and believe, but the way the man's shoulders slumped made you want to say yes, so that he could tell himself he had not invented the way it felt to be in a room with a thing that wanted to be something else. She went with him and stood in his room and listened. The air conditioner made its usual fan-shaped noise. The fridge made its motor song. The television, even off, emitted a high, thin whine that young ears hear and old ones don't. She heard it. In the whine, she thought she heard Lily. That was stupid. She didn't like the way her name sounded in her mind just then. She unplugged the set. The whine stopped. The man looked at her with a gratitude too large for the act. She went back to the desk and stood for a long time without moving, because movement felt like an invitation. The seasons edged. You don't notice until you do. The box fans in windows went away, and then came back one day inside the maintenance room to join the others in a dusty neatness. The hardware store switched the front table to show rakes instead of sprinkler heads. The sky got higher in a way you feel in your neck when you look up. The motel's pool closed with a sign, closed for the season. The ice machine liked the cooler air better and sounded less like an animal working through a problem. The lobby smelled different. Now it smelled like the heat coming on for the first time, the faint ozone of a heater burning off a summer's worth of dust. Lily began to dream of a hallway she had not walked. The hallway had old lights, the glass kind, and shadows like a pair of knees in tights. She dreamed she walked down the hall, and each glass panel she passed showed her from an angle that promised a different version 2 steps ahead. She woke before her hand closed on the knob she knew would be at the end. She woke with her heart in a new place in her body, like it had risen. She took to carrying a small hammer in her bag. It was a bad habit, and she knew how it looked to the version of herself who would be described on paper if anything went wrong. The hammer was not metal, rubber and plastic with a weighted core. She bought it in the dollar aisle of the hardware store, where they sell things that bargain with customer faith. She told herself it was for emergencies, an object with a job that wasn't imaginary. She told herself a hammer is a kind of prayer if you use it to fix and not to break. She left it in her bag, and she didn't show it to herself while she put the bag in its usual place behind the desk. One night a teenager came in and asked if there were any rooms with big mirrors because he was making a video. There was a mirror in every bathroom, and there was the round one in the lobby under the towel. No filming, she said, because the terms of her employment probably included such a rule somewhere, even if the binder had an ante. The boy left with his hood up, and she watched him in the reflection of the door as he went, and his reflection looked older and sadder in a way that made her rub the heel of her hand under one eye. At 1:20 that same night, her phone's black glass, lying face up by the keyboard, turned itself on long enough to show her own face under the lock clock. The time's numbers felt like a kind of countdown she had not agreed to. Her face was a degree to the left that she could not find a cause for. She put the phone face down, and the face came back in the dark underside of the glass screen, the way faces do. She set the phone in the drawer and closed it, and felt foolish, like a person hiding a photograph from their own memory. She wrote in the notebook, "Mirrors are not the only mirrors." On the 4th, the notebook was damp in one corner because the cup of water had sweated and she had set the cup too near. She tore the page and taped it back with the tape she had used to keep a mirror from falling. The tape made a window in the page that looked like a smaller page inside. The whispers gathered. They were not words. They were not instructions in a language she could interpret. They were a suggestion, a mood, a pressure toward. They lived in the space between the edge of her actual face and the one she saw when she had no control of the angle. One night, a man at the counter said, apropos of nothing, "Don't you hate it when you see yourself in a store window and think, is that how I look? That's not how it feels." "Yes," she said too fast. He walked out holding a bag of ice he bought at the gas station because the Motel S machine wore its bag like a veil, and people had found ways to respect certain veils. She stopped covering the lobby mirror because the towel didn't make the mirror go away. It only gave the mirror a new way to be a thing. She set the towel back in the cabinet under the sink with the rolled-up welcome mats they put down when rain came. She stood in front of the circle and looked and said nothing, and the mirror made its noise, and she listened and said nothing still, and the listening became the thing, and the saying nothing became the way to talk. In mid-October, during the kind of windy day that makes the flag flap on the faded pole, by the pool, the way a hand signals a boat, the inn had a partial blackout. Power stayed on in the office. The rest of the building held a grey light that made people come out of their rooms, into the breezeway in their socks, to ask questions that had no useful answers. Lily handed out little tea lights she kept for when the cleaning crew took too long to vacuum, and used up the light. She kept the box of matches and lit the tea lights for people, because setting an open flame in a stranger's hand is a kind of thing you do to make a contract. In the grey light, the round mirror took the room and deepened it. It looked like a lake in a cave now. She stood at a degree from it, and the whisper became something else. It formed a pattern, not letters, not even shapes, more like a rhythm the way a beating heart has. She took a step closer, and the rhythm paused at the bottom of a beat. She took another step, and it resumed. She put her hand on the frame. The wood was not cold and not warm. She leaned a little and saw that her face in the glass, her own face, the one she wore to go to the grocery and to nod at people, had changed without asking her. The eyes had gone hollow. The mouth had found that carnival grin again and made it smaller, something private. The bones of the face had learned to stand behind the skin with an impatience you could have mistaken for a kind of beauty if you were younger and believed in meanness as a thing to wear. "Enough," she said. This time the word did not fall out of the air. The word went into the glass like a coin into a jar. She could tell by how it didn't echo. The woman in the mirror cocked her head, which is a gesture people make when they want to be seen, to be considering your point. Lily felt her heartbeat leave the safe place behind her ribs and climb up into her throat where she could taste it. She set the hammer on the desk between them, her and the circle. She didn't touch the hammer. She wanted the mirror to know it was there as a memory, if nothing else. A tap on her shoulder. It was nothing. It was the air moving because the heat had come on again, and the vent above the coat rack liked to aim at the back of the neck. She put her finger to the place to be certain. The skin there was cool like a thought. She lifted her hand away and set it down on the desk next to the hammer. The mirror S-woman did the same with her hands in a way that should have been the end of the matter, except the mirror's hammer had a different shape. Hers was short and rubber and small. The mirror S hammer had a wooden handle and a head like a dog that would not let go when something set it. She did not sleep that day. She tried and found the inside of her eyelids too bright. She used the morning to do the kinds of jobs that nobody notices until they fail. counted the inventory of soaps, checked the dates on jelly packets, ran the lint roller over the lobby chairs. She ate a stale bagel and pretended she was tasting it. She went upstairs and looked at the towel on the bathroom mirror and took it down and used a wipe to clean toothpaste flecks someone else's towel would have hidden. She looked herself in the face for a long time. She began to hum an easy line, like people hum when they don't want to sing, and it took her a minute to realize the hum had a second hum under it, as if someone in the mirror were humming too. She pressed her lips together, and the hum continued. She set the towel back and said, "Okay." She did not know what that meant. In the days that followed, she kept a level of attention that exhausted and steadied her. She caught each time her reflection varied by a fraction, and if you had asked her why she caught those, and not the times it did not, she would have said, "It's because the brain prefers difference. It's a survival thing," the doctor had said. She believed the doctor when he said things like that, and also she did not. She stopped looking into car windows when she walked past. The tinted ones took her worse than the clear. She began to wear a cap to the supermarket and pulled the visor down and felt a small relief because the cap made the world less glass, a silly sentence she would never say out loud. She talked less with people in town because someone always had a phone screen at a right angle, and she would catch herself becoming a woman she did not like in the glass of it. At the inn, a man complained that the bathroom mirror fogged in shapes every morning, and those shapes looked like the letters of a name. He wouldn't say what name, because saying it made it belong. Lily went up and ran the shower hot and watched the fog develop, and saw a S and then an E and then not an E because the fog changed its mind. She wiped the fog with her palm and left a clear smear. She watched as the smear crept back into blur and thought, time wants what it wants. She thought, what is the opposite of seeing? Then the last night came the way last nights do, without letting anyone write their own invitation. A strong wind had pushed leaf dust under the doors all day, and the vacuum did an admirable job at a whistle. The hotel across the divider road lost a section of its sign, and the word "Sweets" banged against its own pole. Lily took the late shift an hour early because the evening person's kid had a fever, and that is how you do. She made the coffee and placed the wrapped muffins with their plastic windows facing forward so the muffins looked like they were making eye contact. She checked the cameras. She checked the pool gate. She took the bin of towels to the laundry room and fed the machine quarters and listened while it got to its working speed, the thump of wet fabric evening out into a calming sequence. The mirror in the lobby behaved like a mirror that has learned a rule and waits for the mood to change, so it can show you that rules are only rules because you want them to be. At 1:23, give or take, the building creaked in the way buildings do when their joints rehearse. The mirror's surface shivered in a way water does when a bass swims under it. Lily stood. She didn't grab the hammer. She stood and did what you do when you approach a dog and don't want to make it nervous. She came at a slight angle. She kept her hands at her sides. She thought, if it is just glass, it will do what glass does. The reflection in the circle did not match in that one crucial, slow way. It hesitated, and in that small pause, Lily felt like weather on skin, a greeting, not a good one. She felt it like a static charge. She saw the woman in the mirror lean forward, closer to the frame, hands coming up not with palms showing in reassurance, but with fingers touching the wood, like counting. Lily stopped because that was what not to do, and she did it anyway. The whisper in the mirror gained a breath. She recognized the breath. It was her own, thrown back at her, and it carried with it a cool scent like old basements and cleaner. "Don't," she said. She backed until the counter touched her hip, and the wood there had a warmth her thighs recognized from nights leaning like that while waiting for a printout. The mirror's woman smiled. It was a smile you put on to show you understood when you don't. The woman's hands came off the frame. They lifted a fraction and then touched the surface from the inside. The hands made a sound. The sound was like a fingertip on a window. It was like the pads of a hand on a drum. It was like many things you could pretend it was until you ran out of things and called it what it was. Flesh on glass, where flesh should not be. Lily reached for the hammer and found it without looking. She held it down by her leg. The mirror woman's hand left a print, 5 ovals and a parenthesis. The print fogged and cleared and formed again. Behind that, the hallway she had no hallway for stretched away with a carpet runner that made a pattern of leaves. She thought of the plant again. She thought of floats of tin. She thought of a piece of glass so flat you could lay your face down on it and think it was the world. She moved to the side. The woman moved to keep her. They were good at each other. Then a new detail, in the corner of the mirror, near the frame, near a shape carved to look like a wave, a tiny black spot. It grew the way a mold spot grows under a sink when you don't careen after it, a bloom of nothing where silver had gone. She watched the spot and thought, corners are how things start. The spot became a thin line like a hair. The hairline joined another. They formed a figure that could be a letter and then not. She rubbed the frame with her thumb and felt the grain under the varnish and the cold under the grain. She raised the hammer. She thought of the things she owned and how fragile some of them were and how most of them could be replaced if you used the right tone with the right person. "Lily," someone said, "and of all the alarms in the world, there are some your body hears more directly than clanging. Hearing your name is one of them. It came from the mirror. It didn't come. It arrived." She stood in the doorway of her own name. She heard the voice like she hears her voice in recordings she avoids. The voice had her cadence, the way she made vowels longer when she was tired. It had something else in it too, a feel under the sound, a layer that said, "Here now, it's later than you thought." She did not run. She also did not cry. Her body chose a third thing, a stillness that felt like a trapdoor. She looked hard at the surface and saw that there was a depth now, a depth to the glass, which doesn't make sense until it does. Behind the woman's face was the hallway. Behind the hallway was another room, and in that room she saw a rectangle of light, like a doorway you open and then close with your shoulder because your hands are full. She saw a sheen, a floor or a table maybe. She saw herself not in the where, but in the how. The gate, the small stoop of someone who has learned not to wake people when walking at night. "Welcome," the voice said, and she would have fought harder if the word had been anything else. She hated that word. It belongs to doormats and to people who are good at making you feel like you asked for the favor they about to take. The woman in the glass smiled, the better version of Lily's smile. The woman put her hand out. In the mirror, the hand kept going. It did not meet the glass because there was no glass. There was no glass because the glass was the air, because the air was a door. She could say she chose. She could say she did not. She could say a lot of things. What she did was go forward, because there is a point at which the pressure to not go forward is itself a hand. She went forward and said no, and the word made a bubble that slid along the surface of what she went into, and she felt a cold on her skin, the way stepping into shade feels when the shade belongs to a wall that never sees morning. She did not feel hands on her. Not at first. She felt the world change the way a room changes when you blow out the candle. And for a second your eyes hold the form of the flame. Then she felt the hand on her shoulder, not hard, not like a force would be, but like a person reminding another person to be careful on the last step down into a grotto. It was colder than anything ought to be, and it carried a smell like clean, not good clean, hospital clean. She knew the hand was her hand. She knew it because the hand fit in the place, the hand fit. It fit perfectly. That is the cruelty you cannot argue with. Her shoulder learned the size of it, and would always know it if there were a morning after to remember in. On the desk behind her, the monitor on camera 1 showed the lobby as it always showed the lobby. In the circle, the mirror's surface went smooth. The frame showed nothing but room. The camera held the room with its grays. The desk held the hammer. The refrigerator in the breakfast nook clicked off. The silence bloomed. Somewhere outside, a truck took the corner too fast, and its load shifted and made a sound like an argument in a language you didn't speak. In the morning, Josh found the lobby exactly as he expected, which is maybe a sentence that can be said about any morning until the morning you can tea. The round mirror had no towel, no crack. He went behind the desk and saw the hammer and moved it to the lost and someone might bin, because you could use a hammer again. Tools were optimistic that way. He called Lily S phone, and it went to wherever phones go when they are sleeping or away. He waited an hour the way managers wait, which is to say he busied himself in the back room with paperwork and glances at the door. When the first guest came down and poured coffee, he said to Josh without looking, "It's funny, I thought there was a woman worked nights." Josh said, "There is." The guest said, "I must be thinking of someplace else," which is a good way to pull your mind out of the ditch that truth would drive it into. He took his coffee to go, and the bell on the door made the sound a bell makes if you've hit it 1,000 times. The department that sends texts sent one. Water advisory extended through next week. Josh printed a new sign to look responsible. He crossed to the mirror to straighten the frame because the frame had shifted a 1/4 inch in the night. He caught himself in its circle, and he was himself with a little extra around the eyes, nothing to remark on. He adjusted the frame and stepped back and nodded at the man he liked to be on a good day. That night, the desk ran itself with the discipline systems have when no one watches. The ice machine hummed. The cameras watched their grays. A moth beat itself against the front door glass and then made the small decision to rest on the metal, and the rest looked like a choice to someone who has not been a moth. From within the mirror, where the hallway sat with its globe lights and its runner, where the air had that smaller sound, there was a room a person could live in, and the room had a table and a window of its own, and a floor you could sweep, and a cabinet you could stock with little bottles arranged, so their labels aligned. Sometimes, if you stood in the lobby alone, if you waited for the hum to stop, if you found the exact angle where the round mirror met the ceiling, S fluorescent, and the countertop, S sheen, you could hear a sound like paper against paper. If you were tired, the sound was a whisper. It said nothing. It shaped a mouth around what it would be to say something and then did not say it. The frame was wood, and the glass was glass, and the room was a room. The inn sat by the old road, and the neon sign lost another letter after the storm, and the world did its day. None of this could be called a story, except by the people who spent time with the little wrongs of things until the wrongs grew up into something you recognized by the place it left. In the upstairs bathroom of the manager's apartment, the towel on the mirror slid a little, whether because the steam made it heavy or because the air in that room had learned a new trick. Under the towel, the glass had the silver freckles of age. If you stood at a certain angle in the doorway and pressed your hand on the jamb and leaned in, the freckles connected to make a path across an absence. You could put your finger on the glass there and feel a clean cold like a handprint on the other side that has been waiting a long time for that specific shape. Not many people do that. Not many people go looking like that. The ones who do learn the particular quiet that lives between your own breath and the glass that does not need it. Some of them put towels on things. Some of them take the towels off. Everyone learns to keep their hands at their sides when the air says their name in a voice no one else hears. Because what else can you do? Some mornings, before the coffee boils, the round mirror in the lobby shows the room beyond the room for a smear of second you can pretend you did not catch. There is a woman working at a desk there, and she writes small things in a notebook. And she is a person who looks at the world the way you would if the world were made of the backs of photographs, all soft, all written on in pencil. Sometimes she looks up, and the angle is exactly wrong and exactly right, and the word that enters your head is a word you would never choose. Home. You look away like a polite person. You set out the muffins. You check the dates. You never mention any of it to anyone, unless you happen to be at the end of something and need a stranger to take the weight of what you remember. There is no tidy end to this. There is no ticking clock you can stop with a wire. The water advisory remains. The fans move into closets and then out again when the unseasonable heat returns in a week that should have belonged to cold. The power company gets sued by some and pays others. The plant fence grows a snarl of weeds that catch plastic bags like flags for the poverty of lawn care. The inn puts garlands up in December and leaves them until March because spring needs something to pull it forward. People check into room 6 and don't notice the new mirror there is slightly off-center. Trucks park and idle and leave before dawn. The cat in the back lot forgets and remembers the route along the dumpster and the fence. At the desk, there is a hammer in the bottom drawer now. Not because anyone plans to use it, but because one morning Josh said aloud to nobody that maybe a hammer is a good thing to have. The night has a hum, the day does not, a sound like teeth cooling. If a person were to stand at the counter in the middle of it, in the exact center, and look into the round frame and not blink too often, they might think they saw a door. They would be wrong. They saw a room shaped like a door. The difference is the size of a face in a mirror when you tilt your head and become, without meaning to, almost the thing you are looking at. Whether it is almost or all the way is not the mirror's business to say. The glass knows how to hold a world exactly far enough away. The rest of it is up to the air and to the hand that waits. Warm if you're lucky, cold if you're not. Just at your shoulder, the place where you can feel it before it's there. If this story lands with you, please like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who enjoys quiet, literary horror. Comments are open. Tell me your favorite image or line.